Thank you, Chairman, Ranking Member, and witnesses for your amazing service to our country. Thank you. First, Dr. Fauci, there was a bit of an uproar about a picture of you at the Nationals game without your mask on. I think you were seated with your wife. You had a close friend there with no one else nearby you. And that gentleman who was with you had his mask on. I think you have said in the press since that you took it off to take a drink of water. I just want to point out, according to an article in the New England Journal of Medicine, and I quote, significant exposure to COVID-19 means face-to-face contact within 6 feet with a patient with symptomatic COVID-19 that is sustained for at least a few minutes, and some say more than 10 minutes or even 30 minutes. The chance of catching COVID-19 from a passing interaction in a public space is therefore minimal, end quote. The science seems to be pretty clear. We should absolutely wear masks when we're in close contact with those outside of our household. I think that was just the conclusion of that discussion. It's not a crime to pull your mask off, to take a drink of water in 100-degree temperature when you're seated next to your wife and someone else is there. I guess I make the point to show how the media has created all of this hype, which has led to some officials across the country making decisions that are not based on science. And there are real consequences to those. I mean, if people are hot, they shouldn't get heat stroke and not take their mask off. So I'd like to move on to some other troubling actions that were done this week. This week, the chairman of the committee sent 4 letters, all to Republican governors in red states, demanding extensive documents related to coronavirus response. The White House Coronavirus Task Force report has 21 states listed in the so-called red zone. This isn't about transparency. It's about ridiculing 4 states, including my home state of Tennessee, and it distorts the truth. The letter singled out 4 GOP states, but what about the other 17 states? Why didn't California get included in the letter? They've seen an explosion in positive cases. They're in the spike. They're in the 21 listed red zone states. Targeting only Republican governors when clearly 17 other states, many of whom are Democrat, are also experiencing the spikes and in the red zone shows this effort has nothing to do with getting answers and is, as the chairman has said in his opening comments, politics over science. No scientist who wants the truth samples just Republicans. Honestly, it's a laughable partisan strike. It also compounds the insult to all Americans for the failure of this committee to look at the real culprit. As I said in previous testimony, a Columbia University study showed that 66% of American deaths could have been prevented if China had spoken up 1 week earlier. That's thousands of American lives that could have been saved. So instead of addressing the cause of 66% of our casualties, the Select Committee on the Coronavirus picks on American businesses, the Trump administration, and now 4 state governors, all Republican, when we know other blue states are in the exact same situation. This is the definition of partisanship, but I can hear it now. Didn't the right send a letter to certain governors? And yes, we did. We sent it to every single governor who refused to follow the Trump plan, emphasis on plan, and sent COVID-positive patients back to nursing homes, killing patients. We didn't select just a few of those. I applaud Congressman Foster, who approached me as a physician and asked me to join a bipartisan partnering with the administration to assist in the execution of Operation Warp Speed plan. That's how we should be functioning, that kind of bipartisan action. Finally, on a positive note, I wanted to mention the Swedish study and then ask Dr. Fauci some questions about that because I think it really illuminates some of the exciting findings in science. T cells are a type of white blood cell. They regulate immune response. The Swedish study found that many people with mild asymptomatic COVID demonstrate so-called T cell immunity to the coronavirus. The study further found that twice as many who tested positive for antibodies had T cell immunity. So we know there are tons of people out there with immunity that we aren't testing. And I'd love for you, sir, if you could comment, educate America, educate all of us a little bit on T-cell immunity and what the ramifications are to the plans. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. I'll very quickly try to answer that. So there are 2 limbs of the immune response. One is an antibody, which is a protein that is made by the cells of the body to bind to the virus and is usually the hallmark of protection against infection. There's another limb of the immune response called the cellular immune response of T cells. And those T cells have the capability of essentially suppressing or killing cells that are infected and preventing the cells that are infected from making new viruses. So there are two parts of it. Even though one is generally felt to be protecting against the initial infection, the other is an important complementary. And you're right, the Swedes came out with a paper, and also a paper from NIH grantees from La Jolla just came out in the journal Cell, showing the same thing, that in individuals who were infected and recovered, they had T-cell responses, but importantly, there was T-cell reactively also detected in non-exposed individuals, which means that maybe there's some memory from other coronaviruses that are benign cold viruses that you were exposed to that might, and I say might, explain why some people, even children, might be protected, that they had exposure that's not measured in antibody, but measured by T cells. This is work that we really need to pursue. We're just at the cusp of understanding the importance of this type of response in COVID-19. Thank you.